So, as happens often in my life these days, and probably for many of you, I went to bed last night and woke up with two competing images and visions in my head. Knowing that I was preparing for this beautiful film that we're going to be showing this afternoon about Jane Goodall in her last words, I was watching her documentary yesterday as I was putting together my sermon for today. And I don't know if any of you have seen this film yet. It's on Netflix and we're going to be showing it today, but just watching this woman, the wisdom that just exudes from her, just this calm, gentle, kind, compassionate, connected, purpose-filled life of this person that just gave her life to something that she cared so deeply about. I couldn't even watch the film without just feeling good and calm and thinking, even though we have different words for religion or spirituality or whatever we want to call it, this was a woman who was deeply spiritual, very wise. And when you're in the presence of people like that, because of who they are and what they exude, you feel good, even if you're only watching a film on Netflix. And so I was seeing her, and it felt good in my soul to watch this woman. And then I turned on the news, and what I saw was the exact opposite. I saw these men who were out of control and emotional and fearful, with a lack of discipline, violent, hateful. Two polar opposites of what we have the capacity to be as human beings. What I experienced yesterday encompassed it all, from one of the most compassionate, enlightened human beings that has been alive in the 20th century to that. And I just want to say that. The worst of what we can see in humanity, and the worst of what we can see in America right now. And I think that most of us, if you think of this as a continuum, most of us are probably somewhere on that continuum, right? Like a calm, peaceful existence, or just out of control, emotional and angry. And we can probably, on this continuum, we can probably be over here, and then we can be over here, and over here. And I bet even in the last 24 hours, most of us in this room, because we're not quite where Jane Goodall was yet, probably have felt, at least I'll speak for myself, I feel right now a lot of anger. A lot of anger. And I wouldn't say, I'm not feeling fear right now, I'm just feeling anger. And I feel like there are a lot of people in this country right now who are feeling a lot of anger. And maybe some people are feeling fear, but to me, the anger at what happened, and then the anger at what our government is doing to tell us that what we saw, we didn't see. They are lying to us. I'm just going to name it. They are going out in public and they are lying. So what I want to talk about today, because I am going to keep my focus on Jane, but I want to acknowledge it because what I was thinking as I was driving here today, what is our role, right? And I've been talking about this and talking about this. Our role right now is to not lose ourselves, to not lose our heart, but also not to lose our head, to not let what is trying to be forced onto us, what is not being forced onto us, go into our brain. And so I think one of the ways that we can do this is to pay attention and to honor a person that is right now, has been, was throughout her life a leader and a role model. And one of the first things she says in her film when she's being interviewed, the man that was interviewing her said, you know, you were an inspiration to so many people. And she said, I only do what I do so that other people can get inspired to do better themselves. I only do what I do so that other people can get inspired to do better themselves. And she talks about her life and how at the age of 18 months, she already felt in her heart, her soul, that interconnected web. She said at 18 months, she took earthworms with all the earth into her bed. And her mom said that she was just studying these worms with fascination and awe. And then at age 4, she said that they had hens, and her job was to get and go collect the eggs. But she could not figure out where these eggs were coming from. She couldn't find the hole. But where is the hole, she said. So she disappeared one day for about 4 hours while she went into the hen house, and she just waited to figure out where those eggs were coming from. And her mom was so scared because she had disappeared. And her mom was about to call the police and say, I've lost my daughter. When Jane came out and her eyes were lit up and she was so excited and she couldn't wait to tell her mom what she had discovered. But what she said, instead of my mother punishing me, which would have killed my excitement, she said, she listened to my story. She said, a different kind of mother might have crushed my little girl's curiosity. Her mother probably had the fear of a mother when you don't know where your child is. But she knew when she saw the joy coming out of that little 4-year-old that she had to listen to that 4-year-old's life experience, her story. And she credits her mother in this instant with helping her become the scientist that she became. Because she said, my mother could have crushed that in that moment, and it might have been a different story. And I think that's so important for us to realize, right? When we talk about the interconnected web, how are we being with the people around us? And are we inspiring people? Or are we, without realizing it, inadvertently crushing some spirits that we're not realizing because of our own fear or our own insecurity? And then she went on to talk in her interview about that she, in her life, would go out and for hours and hours and hours And he asked, "Did you ever get bored?" And she said, "I was never bored. In nature, there is always something to watch." And then she talked about these dung beetles that apparently would take pieces of poop, and then they would roll them up in little balls, and then they would like carry them off. And she said one day that she watched these two male beetles with this little ball, and one beetle was like pushing it this way, and the other one was pushing it that way and pushing it that way. And then the beetles got into a little fight over this little piece of dung. And she said there was this other little female beetle that already had her ball, and she walked over with her ball. She put their ball on top of her ball, and she walked off while they were fighting. And off she went. Because what she understood was that every part of nature was so beautiful and so fascinating and so interconnected. And imagine what it would be like to give yourself the gift of an entire lifetime to pay attention to what you most care about in the world. And that's why her life was so extraordinary. It started for her at 18 months. And she had the passion that was going through until the very end of her life. And she called it a mission. She said, "I was always on a mission. That's what I'm on this planet for." She had a purpose, and she knew her purpose. And she would say, we all, each and every one of us, is on here for a purpose. She was asked, "Are there people you don't like?" And without hesitating, and I'm not sure when this interview was done, she said, "Absolutely, there are people I don't like, and I would like to put them on one of Musk's spaceships and send them all of them, to a planet he is sure he's going to discover." The interviewer asked, would he be one of the people on the spaceship? "Oh, absolutely, he'd be the host. And you could imagine who I'd put on that spaceship." Who? Along with Musk would be Trump and some of Trump's real supporters, and then I would put Putin there, and I'd certainly put Netanyahu in there and his far-right government. Put them all in his spaceship and send them off. And I was touched by this because you have this wise, caring, compassionate woman who can also name without hesitation when people are not doing the right thing, when people are not being the right way. There was no fear in her naming what made her angry. We can be compassionate and loving and wise and angry and strong at the same time. And so then the interviewer said, "These men seem like not the alpha chimp. They think they are, but their behavior is not." And she interrupted and she said, "Interestingly, you get two types of alpha. One does it all by aggression because they're strong and they fight. They don't last very long. Others do it by using their brains. Like a young male will only challenge a high-ranking one if his friend and his brother is with him. And you know, they last much longer." And she went on to explain how fear can be contagious. And in the population that she worked with, and even in the human population, she says it's kind of innate to want to protect the territory or fight for dominance. But she never lost hope. She said, my biggest hope is raising this generation of compassionate citizens. And that was her program that she called Roots and Shoots, that she worked with the children. And then she said, but do we have time? I don't know. It's really a grim time. But I won't give up. You say, I'm not going to let them win. It's saving Mother Nature. We can't give up. And I don't think any of us want to give up. I don't think any of us are thinking about giving up. But in case you were thinking about giving up or giving in, we don't need to do that. Because the big, strong might is right. It's a paradigm that's leaving. It's having a very violent closing ceremony, as I would say, I guess. But that's not who we are. That's not who we choose to be. And that is not what it means to be interconnected. And so we look to role models like her. And he said, the interviewer, he said, you're always so calm. How are you always so calm? And she said, it was from all of the years and months I spent in the rainforest. It just makes you calm. When you're that connected to nature and the world around you and the interconnected web, you can't help but have that become part and essence of who you are. And this is what I think is so interesting. She wouldn't have really considered herself religious, and she didn't even really, when asked if she was spiritual, she was kind of like, well, you know, I suppose, right? That wasn't where she put her focus, right? Her focus was on these animals and nature. But, and this is what it means to be a highly evolved, and I would say spiritual being, is she was able to connect with nature so much that there were a few times that she actually was able to stop the rain. And she said that there was, in 1991, there was going to be a program for Roots and Shoots, and these young men were going to do a little presentation, and the monsoon season was about to begin. And they were about to start their presentation, and the first big raindrops fell. And the woman that she was doing the program with said, should we go inside? And she said, no, let's just ask the rain to stop. So they all held hands, and she asked the rain to stop. The rain stopped for a half an hour, let these young boys present, and then the monsoon started. And we might think, well, that's a coincidence or whatever, but no, what I want to say is that is a person who is spiritually evolved enough to understand on a level beyond the intellect how interconnected we really are, and that we can do so much more than what we give ourselves credit for when we're that interconnected. And she gave one more story about she was in a rainforest, and there was a kind of a shaman person, and basically it came back to her later that, you know, she was never harmed or ever in danger of any of these animals. And this one place that she was, it turns out that the head spiritual shaman doctor person had sent an edict to the animals that said, don't harm her. And she had this like protection around her. And she tells these stories with such humility. She is not the one saying she was spiritually involved. I'm the one saying that she was spiritually evolved. But that is the true interconnection. And so what I want to do today, I'm going to close my sermon with some of her words that she said in the middle of this film. And then we'll close out, but then I have about 3 minutes of her film, the closing words that she has, that she wanted to tell people. So for those of you that aren't able to be at the film today, you'll get to hear her last words in her own voice. But what she said in the middle of her sermon, not her sermon, her interview, which I'm using as the end of my sermon. The question was, looking back at your life, to all the people that are watching, who would you say you were? And she said, I would say I was somebody sent to this world to try to give people hope in dark times. Because without hope, we fall into apathy and do nothing. And in the dark time that we are living in now, if people don't have hope, we are doomed. And how can we bring little children into this dark world we've created and let them be surrounded by people who have given up? So even if this is the end of humanity as we know it, let's fight to the very end. Let's let the children know that there is hope if they get together, and it even becomes impossible for anybody. It's better to keep on fighting to the end than to just give up and say, okay. So let's sing We'll Build a Land as we get her final words ready to be the last word today.